The wood-paneled courtroom buzzed with an undercurrent of unease. It wasn't loud, just the kind of barely audible rustling that comes when too many people try to whisper at once. Reporters lined the back row, their notepads poised and there, cameras slung low, waiting for the moment when anything would break the tension. Townspeople had filled the benches early, curious to witness the trial that had, over the past few weeks, become the center of local gossip, debate, and quiet outrage. Officer Mark Rollins sat stiffly at the defendant's table, his navy blue suit straining at the shoulders. He looked like a man used to command, but this wasn't his territory anymore. There were no uniforms, no squad cars, no K9 diesel by his side, at least not yet. Here, in the courtroom, it was just Rollins, his lawyer, and a slow unraveling of the image he had so carefully built. For over a decade, Rollins had been the face of trust in the Eastbrook Police Department. He'd led dozens of raids, mentored rookie officers, and posed proudly next to Diesel in newspaper photos. He had a commendation for bravery after a warehouse drug bust and a reputation for never backing down. To some, he was a hometown hero. But to others, especially one young mother and her toddler, he was something far different. Angela Perez sat across the aisle at the prosecution's table, trying to keep her hands from trembling. Her face was composed, but her eyes gave her away, wide, alert, scanning the room with a mixture of anxiety and quiet defiance. Her long black hair was pulled into a tight bun, and her worn blazer didn't quite match her skirt. She looked out of place, like someone who had been dragged into this world and had no intention of staying. Beside her, seated in a small chair, almost too big for her tiny frame, was 3-year-old Lily. The child wore a pink polka-dotted dress and had her dark hair in 2 bouncing pigtails, tied with matching ribbons. Her feet swung above the floor, and she held a soft blue elephant close to her chest. From the outside, she looked like any other toddler, innocent, fragile, distracted by the way sunlight filtered through the courtroom windows. But her presence was deliberate. The judge, a silver-haired woman with a face that could either comfort or terrify, depending on the day, entered and took her seat. "All rise," the bailiff announced. Everyone stood. Angela stood. Rollins stood. Lily remained seated, clutching her elephant. "Be seated," the judge instructed. The murmurs quieted. The gavel tapped lightly on the bench. A few notes shuffled. Then silence again. This was it. The trial had officially begun. The prosecutor, a composed woman named Darlene Hart, stood and faced the jury with a mixture of calm professionalism and subtle fire in her tone. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," she began, "you are here today to weigh facts that suggest a sworn officer of the law, Officer Mark Rollins, exceeded his authority and used excessive force during a raid at the home of Angela Perez." She turned slightly, gesturing to Angela, who nodded almost imperceptibly. During that raid, Miss Perez was not resisting, was not armed, and was not guilty of any crime. Yet she was attacked by a police dog under Officer Rollins's direct command, a dog trained not to act unless instructed. And in that moment, a 3-year-old child, her daughter, was watching. The courtroom remained still. Eyes shifted toward Lily, who was now focused on tracing invisible patterns with her fingers across the table in front of her. "You'll hear arguments about protocols," Hart continued, "about instincts, about officer discretion. But this case isn't about split-second decisions made in the dark. It's about accountability. It's about truth. And ironically, it may be the smallest person in this room who shows us what truth really looks like." Hart sat down. Across the room, Officer Rollins' defense attorney, Michael Denning, stood slowly, buttoned his jacket, and offered a tight smile to the jury. "My client," he began, "is a decorated officer, an honorable man, a man who has risked his life to keep this town safe. He paced gently in front of the jury box. Police work is complicated, fast, chaotic. Split-second choices are made in dangerous situations. And yes, sometimes, those choices are imperfect. But they are made in good faith, under pressure, with the intent to protect. Denning paused, letting the moment breathe. You'll hear allegations. You'll hear emotion. But at the end of this trial, I believe you'll find Officer Rollins followed procedure and did what he believed was necessary. This is not a case of cruelty. It's a case of confusion, fear, and the mésalliances of the real world. He sat down. The judge nodded, signaling that opening arguments had concluded. Witnesses would begin the next morning. For now, the courtroom recessed. People filed out slowly, murmuring as they walked. Some glanced at Rollins with sympathy. Others looked at Angela with quiet respect. But most eyes lingered briefly on the small child, with the pink dress and the solemn gaze. Lily had said nothing. She had done nothing. Yet her presence alone radiated something no adult in the room could touch, an honesty beyond strategy, beyond defense, beyond years of training. Angela packed her things quietly. Lily held up her arms, and Angela scooped her up, burying her face briefly in the child's soft curls. No one noticed the tears in her eyes. Or maybe they did, and just pretended not to. Outside, the news vans were already parked along the street. Lights, microphones, wires tangled across the pavement. The press wanted sound bites. They wanted drama. But what they would get in the coming days was something much rarer. Unfiltered truth, from a voice too small to even reach the microphone. Next day, the court would reconvene. The officers would testify. The body cam footage missing vital minutes would be reviewed. And a dog named Diesel would walk through the courtroom doors once more, wagging his tail. But none of them knew what Lily would say. Not yet. And no. One could predict that when she finally spoke, it would be only 2 words, simple, startling, and unforgettable. It was just after 11:30 p.m. when Angela Perez finally managed to get Lily to sleep. The little girl had been restless all evening, teething, perhaps, or just caught up in the nervous energy that always filled their tiny apartment near the Eastbrook train yard. Angela didn't blame her. The neighborhood had changed. Sirens were more common than birdsong, and the once trustworthy landlord had stopped fixing anything months ago. Angela tucked a blanket around Lily, kissed her forehead, and tiptoed to the kitchen table. She opened her laptop and began reviewing flashcards for her anatomy exam. Nursing school wasn't easy, especially for a single mother balancing coursework, part-time shifts at the diner, and parenting, but she was determined. For Lily, everything was for Lily. The first bang startled her. The second nearly knocked the door off its hinges. Police. Search warrant. Angela's heart leapt into her throat. She spun from the table, her chair clattering behind her. Before she could reach Lily, the door burst open, and men in black tactical gear flooded in. Shouts, heavy boots, beams of flashlight slicing through the dark. Angela raised her hands instinctively, voice shaking. "Please, my daughter's here, she's sleeping." But the officers moved fast, too fast. One pinned Angela against the wall, patting her down roughly. "Where are the drugs?" He barked. "What? There's no drugs," she stammered. "You have the wrong place." In the hallway, Diesel, the police dog, barked ferociously, straining against his handler. Angela turned her head just in time to see Lily's sleepy silhouette in the doorway to the bedroom, holding her stuffed elephant. "Mommy?" Angela panicked. "Please, please, let me get her, she's scared." That's when she felt it, the tearing pain of teeth sinking into her calf. She screamed and collapsed to the floor as Diesel clamped down. Blood soaked her pajama pants. An officer shouted a command, and the dog released, tail wagging, as if expecting praise. Angela sobbed, curling around her leg. Why would you do that? She gasped. One officer knelt and zip-tied her wrists. Resisting, he muttered. From behind him, Lily let out a high-pitched wail. Mommy, Mommy! Angela tried to sit up, but the pain was unbearable. She's just a baby, she cried. You're scaring her, please. Don't hurt her. But the officers ignored her pleas. One picked Lily up awkwardly, like an object, and carried her outside. Angela's screams echoed through the hallway. The search lasted less than 15 minutes. They found nothing. No drugs. No weapons. Just diapers, textbooks, and a frightened toddler. But the damage was done. At the hospital, a nurse cleaned Angela's wound in silence. The bite was deep, and she would need stitches. She could barely speak. Her mind was still reeling. She kept asking for Lily, but no one would give her answers. It wasn't till nearly dawn that a social worker told her Lily had been placed in temporary care. Angela's record, though clean, had a pending charge from the raid: obstruction of justice. It was enough to justify separation until further investigation. The word obstruction sounded foreign to her, unreal. She had been attacked. She hadn't resisted. She'd barely moved. She lay in the hospital bed, staring at the sterile ceiling. The dog's snarl still echoed in her ears. And Lily's face, her confusion. Her fear was burned into her memory like a brand. Angela knew something had gone terribly wrong. And she was certain of one thing: she would not let it go. Back at the Eastbrook Police Department, Officer Rollins was already filing his report. He had done this before many times. He knew how to frame a raid. He knew what language sounded authoritative. He listed the raid as standard procedure. Claimed Angela refused to comply with verbal orders. Claimed Diesel had responded to escalating hostility. He conveniently left out the bite wound, the blood, the screaming child. His partner, Officer Clements, raised an eyebrow. You sure about this version? Rollins looked at him. You want a promotion or not? Clements said nothing. Rollins continued typing. The footage, of course, didn't capture the entire encounter. The body cams had been malfunctioning. Rollins had seen to that, subtly disabling his before entering the apartment. It was a gray area. The department often let slide in high-stakes situations. He was confident nothing would come of it. Angela Perez was nobody. A single mother in a low-income apartment with no legal firepower. And a toddler wouldn't be a credible witness anyway, right? Angela's court-appointed lawyer, Marcus Tate, was fresh out of law school, but sharper than most gave him credit for. When he first met Angela, she was limping and furious, cradling a tearful Lily on her lap. He read through the police report and immediately felt uneasy. I've read cleaner fiction and crime novels, he muttered. Angela's eyes were tired but burning with conviction. He lied. That dog was commanded to bite me. I wasn't resisting. Marcus nodded. And your daughter saw it all? Angela looked down at Lily, who was quietly drawing with a crayon on a piece of scrap paper. She doesn't talk about it, but she remembers. I know she does. Marcus hesitated. A 3-year-old witness? That would never fly in court. Still, he ordered medical records, filed a motion to suppress the obstruction charge, and began combing through Rollins' prior cases. What he found disturbed him. Multiple raids involving Rollins had ended with suspects claiming excessive force, often involving Diesel. But no formal complaints ever stuck. Most of the accused were poor, uneducated, or scared to push back. Marcus started making calls, and when a tip came in about Rollins disabling body cams on more than one occasion, Marcus knew he had something worth fighting for. Still, it wasn't enough. He needed a moment in court that no jury could forget, and oddly enough, it might come from the one person no one expected to matter. A toddler in pigtails. Angela didn't want Lily involved. Not really. She wanted to shield her from the ugliness of the courtroom, from the trauma. But when she asked Lily about the dog one night, Lily looked up from her picture book, blinked, and said, "That dog bite you, Mommy?" Angela froze. "And what did the man do?" she asked carefully. Lily hesitated. Then she whispered, "He said go, then the dog bite." Angela's heart dropped, clear, uncoached, just truth, a toddler's truth. She called Marcus the next morning. "Put her on the witness list," she said, "or at least bring her. You never know." It was the third day of the trial, and anticipation buzzed through the courtroom like static before a storm. Word had already spread that something unusual was going to happen today, something that rarely, if ever, occurred in a courtroom. A police K-9 would be brought in as part of the defense. Officer Mark Rollins sat straight in his chair, his jaw tight, arms crossed. He wasn't nervous, at least not visibly, but his eyes betrayed the flicker of something buried beneath the surface. He had been confident after his testimony the previous day, delivering a measured account of the night in question. According to him, it had been a standard raid. He had followed protocol. Diesel had reacted independently to a perceived threat. That threat had been Angela Pierce. Angela sat with Lily beside her on the bench, both dressed modestly and neatly. Lily wore a sunflower yellow dress this time, holding her stuffed elephant in one hand and twirling her dark hair with the other. She didn't look scared. She looked curious, but Angela knew better. That curiosity came in waves, often shadowed by nightmares. Lily still cried out in her sleep some nights, waking with tears and asking, "The barking gone, Mommy?" Across the courtroom, the judge called order. "We will now proceed with the demonstration requested by the defense," she said, glancing sternly at both legal teams. "Let's proceed carefully. There is a child in the room." Michael Denning, Officer Rollins' lawyer, stood. "Your Honor, today we are presenting Officer Diesel, the K-9, involved in the alleged incident. We aim to demonstrate the dog's behavior patterns, and more importantly, the high degree of obedience training it has undergone." As if on cue, the side doors opened. A uniformed officer stepped in, holding a leash. On the other end walked Diesel, a large, imposing German shepherd with thick black and tan fur, ears alert and eyes scanning the room. His steps were practiced, silent, confident. This was a working dog, and he carried himself like a soldier. Murmurs rippled across the room. A few people leaned back instinctively. But not Lily. She froze. Her eyes widened, her hands gripped the elephant tighter, but she didn't look away. Her breathing quickened, and Angela placed a hand on her shoulder. "It's okay, baby. Mommy's right here." The judge studied Diesel cautiously. "Please keep the animal under strict control." "Yes, Your Honor," said Denning. "This demonstration will be entirely verbal. No contact." The officer handler, Sergeant Hayes, guided Diesel to the center of the courtroom. "Sit," he commanded firmly. Diesel obeyed immediately. "Stay." Diesel didn't move a muscle. Hayes turned to the jury. "Diesel has undergone nearly 2 years of training. He follows every command with precision. He does not attack unless instructed with specific verbal cues. The notion that he randomly bit someone without provocation is, respectfully, extremely unlikely." He then proceeded with a series of commands. Down, heel, guard, retreat. Diesel followed each instruction, flawlessly, barely blinking. The jury watched, impressed. Denning turned toward them. "Ladies and gentlemen, you've just witnessed the exact kind of discipline Officer Rollins depended on during operations. This is not a wild animal. This is a law enforcement asset, one trained not to act unless ordered." Rollins nodded. Silently from the defense table, trying not to smile, Angela watched quietly. She knew this was a performance. An attempt to overwrite what had actually happened that night with theatrics and reputation. But then something unexpected occurred. As Sergeant Hayes led Diesel toward the exit. Diesel passed by the table where Angela and Lily sat. Lily's body went rigid. Her hand let go of the elephant. Her little mouth dropped open. Diesel stopped. Just stopped. The handler gave a tug. Diesel heel. But Diesel didn't move. He looked at Lily. And then Lily, without looking at anyone, her voice, trembling but clear, lifted her tiny arm and pointed at the dog. Her lips moved. 2 words. Bad dog. The courtroom froze. It wasn't loud. It wasn't shouted. But it was unmistakable. Everyone heard it. Gasps rippled through the gallery. Jurors turned. The judge blinked. Even Sergeant Hayes seemed caught off guard. Diesel whined a soft, high-pitched sound and took a single step backward, eyes flicking away from the child. Angela looked at Lily, stunned. And Lily didn't blink. Her face was calm. But there was no doubt. She remembered. Denning tried to speak, to pivot, but the moment had already settled like smoke over the room. The judge raised a hand. Order. The gavel struck, but the weight of Lily's words hung heavy. It wasn't just the simplicity of it. It was the purity, the lack of agenda. It wasn't rehearsed. It wasn't strategy. It was memory. Raw, honest, and impossible to ignore. After court adjourned for the day, the media exploded. By 6 p.m., local news stations were airing the footage of Lily's 2 words on repeat. National outlets picked it up overnight. Toddler stuns courtroom in police misconduct trial. Hashtags bloomed across social media. A clip of Lily pointing at Diesel went viral. Thousands of people watched it, debated it, wept over it. Some called it manipulation. Others called it truth. But no one denied its impact. Rollins' defense team scrambled. Behind closed doors, Denning snapped. That damn dog reacted. You saw it. Rollins swore under his breath. It's just a kid's imagination. But he wasn't sure anymore. He knew Diesel. And Diesel's reaction, breaking command, showing submission, was not something the dog had ever done during demonstrations. Unless he recognized her. That night, Angela and Lily sat on the couch at home, a blanket wrapped around them. They watched the news play Lily's clip again. Angela turned the volume down and kissed the top of her daughter's head. You are so brave, she whispered. Lily smiled sleepily. He's not scary now. Angela wrapped her arms tighter around her daughter, but deep down, she knew the war wasn't over. Not yet, but Lily had cracked something open. Truth had slipped into the courtroom, not with noise or fury, but with 2 small, perfect words. And from here on out, nothing would ever be the same. The morning after Lily's quiet yet explosive courtroom moment, the courthouse steps were crowded. Reporters, photographers, and curious onlookers swarmed like bees around a hive. Microphones pointed in every direction. News vans lined the block. For once, this was not just a trial, it was a national conversation. Angela Perez arrived quietly through a back entrance, escorted by her attorney, Marcus Tate. He clutched a file under one arm and walked with a protective edge. He had gotten Angela into the building safely, but he knew things had changed. This was no longer about one unjust raid, it was about justice itself. Inside the courtroom, the mood was different, more alert, more serious. Even Judge Harmon, usually stone-faced, looked contemplative as she took her seat. Before we proceed, she began, her voice steady, I want to remind everyone, this is a court of law, not a circus. I understand the public interest in this case has grown, but my job remains the same, to ensure that truth prevails. Mr. Tate, you may continue with your argument. Marcus stood. He had planned for this day. But after what happened with Lily and the dog, he knew something had shifted. There was momentum now, and he had to use it before the defense turned the tide back in their favor. Your Honor, with the court's permission, I would like to enter a new piece of evidence into the record, he said, tapping the file under his arm. Judge Harmon nodded. Proceed. Marcus walked toward the center of the courtroom and held up a copy of Officer Rollins' K-9 activity logs documents he had obtained only the night before, after digging through old records with the help of a retired officer who had contacted him anonymously. These are Diesel's deployment reports. Each time the dog was used in a search, in a pursuit, or in a home entry, there should be a matching form, time-stamped and approved. He flipped the page, then another. Except here on the night of the raid against Ms. Perez. This entry was added after the incident. It's backdated, and it's missing a required supervisor's signature. That's a violation of department policy. The jury listened closely. And here, he continued, are photos of Angela Perez's leg, taken just 2 hours after the incident. We have medical records showing she was treated for a puncture wound caused by a canine bite. He paused. There is no mention of that bite in Officer Rollins' official report. He turned to face the courtroom. Why would an officer trained in protocol leave out something so significant from his documentation? Why would a dog trained to obey fail to do so unless commanded? Rollins' attorney stood immediately. Objection. Speculation. But Marcus raised a hand. I'm not speculating. I'm questioning. The defense claimed yesterday that Diesel never acts without instruction, that he's trained to respond only to specific verbal cues. We saw that with our own eyes. He turned to the jury again, but what we also saw yesterday was a moment of recognition. Not from a child, but from a dog. The courtroom fell into a tense silence. Diesel recognized Lily. He paused. He didn't bark. He didn't growl. He backed away. That is not instinct. That is memory. Rollins shifted in his seat, suddenly uncomfortable. Marcus stepped closer to the jury box. Ladies and gentlemen, this is no longer about a single error. This is about abuse of power. A trusted officer used a trained canine to assault a civilian, then tried to bury it under paperwork. He gestured toward Angela. And in doing so, he left a toddler traumatized. A child who spoke no rehearsed lines, gave no coached testimony. She simply pointed to a dog and told the truth. 2 words, and everyone heard it. That night, Marcus's phone rang. Marcus? This is Nancy McAllister. I was internal affairs for Eastbrook PD 3 years ago. Marcus sat up. He'd heard of her. She'd left the force quietly after disagreements over discipline procedures. I've been following the trial, she continued. And I thought you should know, there were complaints against Officer Rollins before. One of them involved a canine incident with a civilian. The complaint mysteriously disappeared. Do you have records? Marcus asked. I do, she said. Not originals, but scans. And sworn affidavits from the victims. I'll send them to your office tonight. Marcus exhaled. Another crack in Rollins' armor. The ripple was becoming a wave. Meanwhile, Rollins was unraveling at the precinct. He slammed his locker shut. His badge felt heavier on his chest. He didn't speak to anyone. He knew he was being watched now by his department, by the press, by the world. And Diesel, his loyal partner, his enforcer, had disobeyed him. Publicly. He replayed the moment in his mind again and again. Lily pointing, saying, bad dog. It wasn't just embarrassing. It was exposing. Like the dog had revealed something he had buried deep. He knew Marcus Tate would keep pushing. And if internal affairs got involved, he'd be lucky to retire early, if not end up behind bars. Wasn't just fighting a lawyer. He was fighting the truth. Angela sat on her balcony with Lily asleep inside. The city lights flickered, and for the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to breathe without fear. The case wasn't over, but momentum had shifted. People were listening. People believed her, now not because she was loud, but because the truth had spoken in its purest form. Through her daughter's innocence, she thought about everything she had lost. The trauma, the fear, the helplessness. But now, she was gaining something more powerful. A voice, and she wasn't going to stop. Using it. Back in the judge's chambers, Judge Harmon reviewed the new files Marcus had submitted. She was a seasoned judge, used to complex cases, but this one had stirred something inside her. Maybe it was the child. Maybe it was the dog's reaction. Or maybe it was the realization that even the most respected systems could be corrupted quietly, efficiently, and without consequence. Until someone said, "Enough." She closed the folder, took a deep breath, and returned to her desk. Tomorrow's session would be the most important yet. The truth was no longer buried. It was barking. Morning sunlight slanted across the courtroom windows as the fifth day of trial began. The air was thick with anticipation. It had been just over 48 hours since Lily's soft but unforgettable words, "Bad dog," broke the rhythm of the defense's polished narrative. Since then, the trial had taken on a life of its own. Today, Marcus Tate was ready to drive a wedge deeper into the fragile armor Officer Rollins had been hiding behind. Angela sat beside Marcus at the plaintiff's table, more composed than she had been all week. She had barely slept, but something had shifted. Her silence no longer felt like a weight. It was strength-charged and waiting. Lily stayed home today. Marcus had insisted. "We've already heard the most powerful testimony in this room," he had said gently to Angela. "We won't put her through more than she's already endured." At the defense table, Officer Rollins sat uncomfortably. His lawyer, Denning, was more rigid than usual, constantly adjusting his tie, flipping through pages he had already memorized. Everyone sensed it. Something was coming. "Judge." Harmon looked up from her bench and adjusted her glasses. "Mr. Tate," she said, "you may call your next witness." Marcus stood. "The prosecution calls Nancy McAllister." Gasps rustled through the room like wind through dry leaves. Nancy McAllister, former head of internal affairs at Eastbrook Police Department, walked to the stand with quiet confidence. Silver hair pulled into a bun, sharp eyes, and a stack of folders in her hands. She radiated the energy of someone with nothing to lose and everything to reveal. After she was sworn in, Marcus began. "Ms. McAllister, how long did you serve with Internal Affairs?" 17 years, she replied, her voice firm. "And in that time, did you ever investigate Officer Mark Rollins?" "Yes, twice, formally. A third time informally, which is what I'm here to talk about." Denning jumped up. "Objection. This is character assassination." Judge Harmon raised an eyebrow. "Overruled. If Ms. McAllister has evidence, I will hear it." Marcus nodded. "Please continue." McAllister opened her folder and pulled out a printed report. 3 years ago, Officer Rollins was involved in a raid where his K9 Diesel allegedly attacked a civilian without warning. The man, a college student named Devin Brooks, was unarmed. He suffered multiple bites and required surgery. She passed copies to the judge and jury. "What happened to the complaint?" Marcus asked. "It disappeared," McAllister said bluntly. "The report was buried. The victim was paid a private settlement, and Officer Rollins was never disciplined." A murmur passed through the courtroom. Marcus leaned in. "And you're saying this pattern of behavior commanding the dog to attack civilians is not isolated?" "I believe it's a pattern of abuse, masked by forged paperwork and quiet payouts." Denning tried to object again, but the judge waved him off. Marcus continued. "Were you able to obtain a sworn affidavit from Mr. Brooks?" Yes, he's willing to testify. He was afraid then. But after seeing what happened to Angela Perez and her daughter, he came forward. He turned to the jury. We're not just talking about negligence anymore. We're talking about intent. That night, every major network aired McAllister's testimony. News anchors replayed her words over graphics showing Officer Rollins and Diesel in black and white. Social media exploded again. Hashtag justice for Angela. Hashtag bad dog truth. Diesel did it. Thousands began to question the reliability of canine officers. Petitions formed, calling for greater oversight. Community leaders demanded investigations into other Eastbrook PD incidents. Angela watched the news from her couch, holding Lily close. It's not just us anymore, she whispered. Lily nodded. Against her, the dog knows. Angela kissed her head. And now so does the world. Rollins, now in damage control mode, met with Denning behind closed doors. You told me there were no skeletons, Denning hissed. I didn't think they'd find McAllister, Rollins muttered, sweat beading at his temples. She was long gone. I thought it was over. Denning shook his head. This isn't just bad, it's criminal. You lied in your report. You falsified entries. If the jury sees this as a cover-up, we're talking about prison time. I'll fix it, Rollins growled. There's gotta be a way. Denning looked away. You don't fix the truth, Mark. You survive it. The next day in court, Marcus called his final surprise witness, Devin Brooks himself. He entered nervously, but held his head high. The courtroom hushed. He took the stand and looked straight at the jury. I was just leaving a friend's apartment. There was a raid happening down the hall. I was caught in the crossfire, so to speak. No weapon, no warning. Just a growl in pain, a dog on my leg, then fists. He paused. They said I resisted, but I was on the ground. I didn't fight. I screamed. His voice broke. They paid me to forget. I said yes, but I never did. The jurors leaned in. One woman wiped a tear. Even Judge Harmon looked visibly shaken. After court adjourned, Denning pulled Marcus aside. This ends badly for both sides if we go any further, he said quietly. You want justice. We want to protect the department. Let's talk deal. Marcus stared him down. Angela wants accountability, not handshakes behind closed doors. Rollins will never confess. Then we'll let the jury decide. That night, Rollins sat in his apartment, the silence around him louder than any courtroom. He stared at a picture of Diesel as a puppy back when he thought the dog was his greatest tool, his protector, his shield. Now that same dog was the one thread unraveling his career. The girl hadn't just remembered. The dog had too. Maybe that was the part he couldn't outrun. Back in her apartment, Angela tucked Lily in and whispered, Almost done, baby. Tomorrow? Lily asked. Maybe, but no matter what, you did something big. Lily smiled. The dog remembers. Angela nodded. So do we? The courtroom was tense, thicker than the humid air outside. Rain tapped softly against the high windows as the sixth day of the trial began. The city outside had slowed. The people inside had not. The world was watching. Angela sat quietly, her expression firm but exhausted. Lily was at home again, safe with a family friend, unaware that her tiny voice had shaken the very core of a police department. But everyone else knew. And today, it all felt like it was building towards something inevitable. Marcus Tate stood by the prosecution table, flipping through his notes. He had built his case one careful brick at a time, but now the walls around Officer Rollins were cracking, and he was about to strike the final blow. Judge Harmon called the room to order. The buzz of whispers died immediately. Mr. Tate, she said, you may proceed. Marcus looked up. Your Honor, before resting our case, we'd like to offer one final opportunity. He turned toward Officer Rollins, who sat rigidly at the defense table. "We are prepared to call Officer Rollins to the stand." Gasps stirred. Even Denning looked startled. Judge Harmon leaned forward. "Is the defense willing to allow the witness?" Denning leaned toward Rollins. They whispered urgently. Rollins looked pale. His hands clenched, then unclenched. Finally, he gave the faintest nod. Denning sighed. "The defense accepts. Officer Rollins will testify." The room went silent. Rollins took the stand slowly. For the first time, the power seemed to have drained from his posture. No badge, no canine vest. Just a man under oath, under pressure, and dangerously close to the edge. After swearing him in, Marcus approached. "Officer Rollins," he began, "do you remember the night of the raid on Miss Perez's home?" "Yes," Rollins answered, eyes fixed on a spot on the floor. "Did you deploy your canine partner Diesel into that apartment?" Rollins hesitated. "Yes." "Did Diesel bite Miss Perez?" Rollins looked to his attorney. Denning gave a small shake of the head. "Don't answer that." But the judge stepped in. "You're under oath, officer. Answer the question." Rollins swallowed hard. "Yes, he did." A hush fell over the courtroom. "And did you order him to attack?" Silence. Rollins shifted, face tight with conflict. Yes. A single word. But it exploded like a bomb. Angela covered her mouth. The jury's eyes widened. Judge Harmon slowly leaned back in her chair, the weight of the moment settling over her. "Why?" Marcus asked, stepping closer. Rollins stared at his hands. "We'd been watching the neighborhood for months. We had bad intel that her place was a drop spot. I was frustrated, tired. When I saw her run back inside, I thought she was hiding something." He looked up, his voice cracking. "I didn't see a mother. I saw a target." "And the report you filed?" "Falsified. I wrote that the dog entered by accident, that no one was bitten. It was cleaner that way. Easier." Marcus didn't move. "Did you ever think about Lily? The child who watched you send a dog after her mother?" Rollins blinked, shame flooding his face. "I didn't even see her. I didn't know ... He trailed off. No further questions. Marcus said, and returned to his seat. Denning didn't bother cross-examining. There was nothing left to save. Outside the courthouse, a tidal wave of reporters scrambled to adjust their headlines. "Officer admits to illegal canine attack," appeared on every screen within minutes. Video clips of the confession hit the internet like wildfire. Activists took to the streets. Signs filled the air. "Protect, don't attack. Justice for Angela and Lily. Truth has teeth too." Angela watched it all unfold from inside the quiet of the courthouse halls. Tears on her cheeks, not of pain, but relief. For the first time in years, she felt seen, believed. Did he really say it? She whispered to Marcus, who stood beside her. "He did," Marcus nodded. "All of it." Angela looked down the hallway toward the exit, her breath trembling. "Then it's over." "No," Marcus said. "Now it really begins." That evening, the police department held a press conference. The chief, visibly shaken, stepped to the podium. "We are aware of the admissions made in court today," she began. "Effective immediately, Officer Mark Rollins has been placed on administrative leave pending formal charges. An independent review will be launched into all past canine deployments under his command." She paused. "We are also reviewing every raid conducted by the Eastbrook Narcotics Task Force over the last 5 years. If policies were abused, if power was misused, we will take action." Reporters shouted questions. None were answered. But the message was clear. The shield was no longer unbreakable. Back at Angela's apartment, the energy was different. Light spilled into rooms that had felt dark for too long. Friends stopped by. A neighbor brought food. Her phone buzzed with messages from strangers across the country, thanking her for speaking up. Lily sat on the floor with a stuffed animal in her lap, ironically, a dog. Angela had offered to throw it away, but Lily said no. This one's a good dog, she'd said. Angela smiled. Yes, baby. This one listens. They sat on the floor, side by side. No news, no noise, just peace. For the first time, Angela believed they'd sleep through the night. That same night, Marcus sat alone in his office, filing away documents and closing folders. His phone rang. It was McAllister. You did it, she said. We did. It? Marcus replied. What now? He looked at the newspaper on his desk. Rollins' face, beside the headline. Now we wait. And then we make sure this never happens again. McAllister paused. I've still got names, files. You want them? Marcus exhaled. Send everything. And in a quiet corner of the city, Diesel lay in his kennel, still and silent. He hadn't been taken out since the testimony. He hadn't barked or growled, or moved much at all. But when the officer who came to feed him opened the gate, Diesel looked up not with fear or aggression, just memory. The past had a scent, and the dog remembered it.